first of all, thank all of you for coming. And a big thanks to, you guys all know Ashton. Big thanks to Ashton. You know, we couldn't do this without her. So I give talks all around to doctors. I've been doing it for since about 2010 as part of a big society called the Obesity Medicine Association. We're a group of we started about 1,800. We're about 2,300 primary care people, specialists who treat weight around the country. And I give all these talks, and I said a couple months ago, why am I not doing any of that here? And so here we are. I prepared a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. I'm open to questions. I love when people stop and say, hey, what's happening? I like this to be more of a discussion. Oh no, I know. I'll go in and out of it.
Okay.
Thank you. But
air traffic control.
Exactly. But you know, it's just a big open discussion, hopefully. And hope when you come home or when you go home tonight, you'll have learned something about what we think, or I think, is the reason that we're having this problem of weight in our society today. So with that being said, just a few things we're going to talk about. So the science behind the weight problem, and what we now believe is that obesity, the disease, is there. This is not a personal failing, although many of our unfortunate primary care colleagues say diet harder, exercise more, and that has not worked. If it really worked in our society, none of us would be here today. It doesn't work by itself. Maybe that's the better way of saying it. Your body is working against you, and we're going to go into some of the science behind that, at least the theories of science behind that. I planned out another one coming up next month, and so I kind of said I want to turn some science part, then I want some kind of take-home tool. Is there something I can take home from today and learn that I can implement tomorrow and the day after and the day after? So that's some take-home tools overcoming willpower problems. Because if we use just willpower, we use it up. A lot of people call willpower the bank account, right? And when the bank account runs out, so does the willpower. Next month is Wednesday. I had 5:30 there, but I realized Wednesday at 5:30 there's actually already a class, so we're gonna go 6:30. If you want to come for the 5:30 normal class, that would be wonderful also. For those of you who have never been to class, it happens here in this room. There's usually the wall up. You know, we've studied, interestingly enough, Dr. Zeltzer and I, we've been very interested in why we put all these pieces together for so long. And we've studied people who come to class, and when there isn't class and people don't go to class, what kind of weight loss you see. And we see 50% more weight loss when people attend classes. And that's for a lot of reasons. There was an interesting study years ago that looked at, well, it's really 4 groups. In one major group, people went to class. In the other major group, they didn't go to class. Inside each group, half of them wanted to be there, so half of them went to class, wanted to be there. Half of them didn't want to be there. In the other group, the ones who didn't go to class, half of them wanted to not go to class, and half of them actually wanted to go to class. Of the 4 groups, who lost the most weight?
The ones that actually did it. The ones that actually went and wanted to be there.
So the ones who went to class and wanted to be there. Any other thoughts?
The ones who didn't want to be there.
It was actually, did we talk about that yesterday or today?
No, I
Oh, yeah, so it is actually, it is actually the ones who went to class who did not want to be there. And there's a lot of theories, we don't know for sure, it was a study done and they didn't look at that. We think one of the reasons behind that is someone who's comfortable going to class, has been to a lot of classes, they've already learned those things and now they're going to class. The person who's never been to class, they have now more to potentially learn at that piece. And then overall, if you want to put on a piece of paper or whatever, if you have questions, suggestions, anything for future nights, as I start to put these together, I'd like to do one this month. If you guys are interested, I'd do another one next month. Nothing in December, we all have things going on. Another one in January and go from there. I have a lot of little talks I give. The next one I think we're going to talk about is medical therapy and all the different drugs that we use and why we use them and so forth. So that kind of being our introduction, let's get started. Do we have a weight problem? How much of a weight problem? That's the question, right? It's a lot. 3 out of every 4 people in our country are overweight now. 3 out of every 4. Let's look at that. So when did it start? That's the interesting thing. The slides I'm going to show you, if you've been to weight loss conferences, they've been showing these slides for years, but I think they're fascinating. So if we go back, this is a picture of, oh, it's missing the bottom. Well, I'm going to have to talk you guys through it then. This is a map of the United States in 1985. The white we have no idea what was going on in those states. The light,
We still don't know what's going on.
we still don't know what's going on in those states. I don't know why my Mac is cutting it off, but there's actually a top and a bottom to this. And so the light blue, which is Illinois, you can see a couple over here. Is that a little better? Okay. And then the dark blue is between 10 and 14%. So 14% and down is the whole country in 1985. We're going to jump ahead 5 years. This is 1990. We're starting to fill in the ones that we didn't know about. We're starting to fill in. They're actually, if you look at light blue to dark blue, there's now a lot more dark blue 5 years later. But still, we didn't have some data on the early ones, so maybe it's still, we can say some things. Let's go 5 more years. So this is 1995. Every state in the country is either 10% to 14% or 15 to 19% in 5 years. It keeps going. 2000, we have a new category. We'll call it light brown. Light brown is now over 20%. 5 more years. What's happening? Uh-oh. Now we're 2005. Oops, I think I skipped 2005. So now we have orange states, which are these in here. Orange states are between 25 and 29. But guess what? We now have dark, I think the maroon states, the southeast, you know, the kind of the heart of the problem with weight in our country. So these states are greater than 30%. Again, we've gone from 1985 where we started to 2005 here. It gets worse. Even more of them fill in over 30%. There isn't a state now less than 20%. If there was one that's the leanest, if that's the word we want to use, Colorado, actually. I have a friend there who says he's proud of that piece. Yes?
Are these percentages, you're saying the percentage of that each person's overweight or the percentage of all people?
All people in the state, how many of them are overweight? Or actually the true obesity, so BMI of 30 or above.
So more than 20% of all people in all states are obese?
Correct.
Wow.
But we're not done. 2015. So the colors changed a little bit. When you go through, there's a light green, or there should be a light green, which is less than 20%. And actually, there are no less than 20% states. The next one is the next green, so think of Colorado, California, Utah, and so forth. Those are 20 to 25%. We get to the yellow states. There's a lot of them, Florida, Arizona being us, down there. 25 to 30%. Again, we're in 2015, so this is still 3 years ago. We get to the kind of orange, middle of our country states. Those are 30 to 35%. So if there's a 30 to 35, I'm going to give you one more. Now we have over 40, actually, greater than 35% are southeast. And then the latest latest time we have data is last year, 2017. Oh, actually, these now fall in here. So now even more states greater than 35. Ouch. We have a problem going on in our country. And despite everyone trying, everyone in this room trying, and most of the people I know trying to lose weight, as a population, we're not doing it. Here's a state-by-state numbers. So I have Arizona, 29.5% last year of our state having obesity, BMI 30 or greater. And the number one worst, heaviest state, you look fastly, you'll find it.
Louisiana.
Oklahoma?
West Virginia, it's actually right there. You can't see it. Sorry. West Virginia at 38.1% of West Virginia. So some statistics. No state in 2017 having a prevalence of obesity less than 20%. 20% and up. 2 states, including DC, and 2 others, had between 20 and 25. The 2 others are Hawaii and Colorado, as I talked about. 19 states had between 25 and 30. 22 states between 30 and 35, and then those 7, mostly southeastern states, of 35% or greater. Why? Anybody have any thoughts?
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy. That has actually been come up many times in the last 30 or 40 years. Conspiracy. What else? I'm sorry? Processed food. Good one. What else? Sedentary society. Absolutely. Technology. Yes.
I blame it on the iPhones.
iPhones. Steve Jobs is at fault.
Just trying to figure out what makes those certain states here,
Mm.
the worst.
Maybe it's the fried, fast food, fried food, high carb foods. Maybe it's genetics.
Cold states, but it's not.
It's not just a
also more working couples, and so less time to prepare foods and then to the fast food and eating out kind of thing more.
Yes. What else?
To do with states.
So since families like move all around the country,
Mhm.
that you don't pass on skills, so people don't do things themselves, like fix their house or do their yard. They pay people to doing stuff, so they're not active.
Absolutely. And I'll take it a step further. Don't even cook. The cooking the way it happened, 30 minutes. It's a meal. What do we have a meal now in? 2 minutes, 30 seconds, microwave, beep, beep. Right? More often than not, or drive through, or pick up and take it home. Any others? Kids. Absolutely. Busy lives. Soccer moms. Yep.
High fructose corn syrup.
High fructose corn syrup. I've heard that one a few times. Terry?
Marketing with commercials.
Commercials.
The portions at restaurants are ridiculously large wherever you go, pretty much. And like, you literally have to walk in and cut a meal in quarters, because that's really the portion you should be eating at most restaurants.
Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
Even a salad at Cheesecake Factory is like 1,500 calories.
Right.
It's a salad.
Alcohol.
Alcohol. Absolutely. I'm going to tell you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
The thing is, if it was all sociological,
Mhm.
we would all be overweight. But the fact is, we're not all overweight. There's just a certain percentage of us that are. So why?
It's a good question.
Willpower.
I think the cost of food has something to do with it, because you could go to anywhere and get the biggie meal for $5, right? But you can't go and get a healthy meal for $5.
Absolutely true.
Rich people are fat too.
Yes, they are. So I'm going to tell you what I believe is actually you're all right. I think that this is a genetic problem at its heart, and we'll talk about that in the next couple slides, in a society that promotes it. And it's been discussed that there's probably about 20 what we're going to call major genes. So in our genetics that get passed down from generation to generation. If you have one of those major genes, the likelihood of you being significantly overweight as an adult is high. Or if you have, there's probably 200 of what we'll call the minor genes. Some people have 8 of them, some people have 10 of them, some people have 15 of them, but they're different. And that's when someone says too much carbs, not enough exercise, too much alcohol. All those little things make all of us different. We carry weight on the outside, but it's the inside we don't see. And that's the part that makes all of us different. And that's why all of those answers, I believe, are right. Who are these people? Indians. So Pima Indians. Pima Indians from the southwestern United States. Their ancestors actually came to this valley all the way south 300 BC. What kind of Indians were they? What did they do? They were warriors, farmers, what kind of stuff? Farmers.
For the most part.
Farmers. We live in the desert here. Who grows stuff in their backyard? And we have irrigation. Who grows stuff to eat in their backyard? Almost none of us. So if you're living here with maybe horses, no machinery, nothing else, and you're a farmer, do you eat a lot? You don't. And you go from famine to famine to famine. So what does your body get really good at doing? Living from famine to famine to famine. And what does that mean? So if if one person's genetics, they wake up one day and their genes say, if I eat this little bit of food, I can put more weight on, and my neighbor who doesn't, and the famine comes and I have more strength to reproduce and live and do all those other things and they can't, my genes go forward a generation. And so what does that end up today? What disease, number one, besides weight? Diabetes. It's hard to see, but this is Pima Indians today. By the age of 35, 50% of Pima Indians have diabetes. 50%. I don't know if I have it on. Oh, actually, here's a little timeline, but I'm going to go back. If you look at their relatives who were split away around 1850s or so, stayed south of the border, Mexico, still farmers. What is the incidence of diabetes? So these are their cousins, their relatives. A lot less, about 6%. Versus you come to the United States, you do we'll call it American things. Food is part of it. All the other things, 50%. The national Mexican average, when it said that the Pima Indians were 6%, national average was 2.5%. So they are still more than the population they're living with, but not as much as their cousins that live across the border.
So are you saying their genetics are predisposed that when there is more food, they'll store more of it and store more fat?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think all of us fall somewhere between that piece. 6 million years ago, our earliest ancestors. 200,000 years ago, modern humans came around. 6,000 years ago, civilization as we know it kind of came around. So we're talking generation after generation of famine and so forth. Then things start to change. So 1800s, the start of industrialization. That's kind of, we'll start saying that's where the tide starts to slowly turn. 1879, the first electric light bulb. So we couldn't have had smartphones, we couldn't have TVs or anything for sure before 1879. So we're not talking that many years ago. The really kind of biggest push that started, I think, what we have today is industrialized farming. You now have tractors that can till thousands of acres, so we don't have to farm it with animals any longer. And so we can do much, much more food. And when there's a lot of food, certain things become cheap. Carbohydrates become cheap. Corn becomes cheap. Things like that. And then we get into the 1970s, which is really, for all of us, in really the start of all of this. And this goes to what everyone else was talking about, where I think all those things are right. 2 worker families is what that means. There isn't someone home who's spending that 30 minutes plus cooking for the family and then bringing everyone together and sitting down as a family and eating. When there was 1-car families, not 2-car families. 1 working adult versus 2 working adults. Microwave ovens. It's been said that there's something wrong with microwaves themselves hurting our food. My personal belief, and it's only my personal belief, microwave ovens themselves don't do anything to the food. The fact that you can be hungry and have a full meal in 2.5 minutes, that is the problem. Because you never go through the hunger cycle. For those of you who have been to Lisa Galper's classes, hunger comes in a wave. It starts, it gets higher, higher, higher. If you do nothing, around 12 minutes later, it actually starts to get better. That's 12 minutes. If I've already eaten at 2.5 minutes, or I'm in a restaurant fast food and I've eaten my whole meal in 20 minutes or less, I never had a chance to even start to get full. And we'll talk about full and hunger. That's actually the meat, if that's the right word, of the talk tonight. And then the low-fat movement in the 1970s, where fat was bad. The government was wrong. There's a couple books out by a gentleman called Gary Taubes. One of them is called Why We Get Fat. It's probably a nice overview. It took his bigger book called Good Calories, Bad Calories, which is about a 400 or 500 page book, and brought it down to about 150 readable pages. And he basically traces through this, and there was a bunch of studies. One of them said low fat is good for us, and the others were kind of undecided. But the government felt we had to do something because people were dying with heart disease. What they knew was cholesterol in our bloodstream was bad. So you measure cholesterol. If we have high cholesterol, that's bad. But how it got into our bloodstream, that was the mistake. It is not fat. When we eat fat, it does not cause fat. When we eat carbohydrates, it more causes fat. We now know that eggs are back to being an amazing food. Where in the 1960s, that was your power breakfast. 70s, 80s, early 90s, 1 egg a week. That's what we were limited to. We're back to eggs again. Things have come full circle. Oh, this is good. So obviously we talked about fast food. My next slide is actually much better than this. So it's saying things have been changing. This on the right side, 1960, 210 calories fries, 85 calories, and 125 calories. Or something, 120. 2011, up 250, 500, 2011. I'll show you in a second the difference. Without doing the math quickly, how many calories difference do you think are between the two? Oops. You can't see it.
Everybody in this room knows you always buy the Diet Coke. Because if you
You do always buy
you drink the Diet Coke, you can have the bigger fries.
it. So you are 100% right. Because everyone knows who knows me says you're never going to have the regular Coke because you're going to have the fries. So really what it is, it's about 400, you can't see it on the bottom, 415 calories on this side, 1,400 calories on this side. 1,000 calories in one meal difference. And this is lunch. So you go home and if your lunch is this size and we're Americans, our dinner is almost always bigger than our lunch. So we're having even more calories then. And who knows what we had for breakfast? It was a bagel, it was a donuts, it was a fast food thing. That's not everybody here, but at the times we've probably all done it. But our society is still doing it. That's where we see it all the time. It's hard to see, but this starts the genetic side of the talk. This is a head, and there's this little organ there about the size of a blueberry. What's it called? It's right behind the pituitary. It's called the hypothalamus. When something is in the middle of the skull, it's completely protected. The rest of the brain is around it, so it preserves it through time. If you lose the hypothalamus, you don't live. If you lost a little piece of your brain on that side or the temporal lobe on that side, you may not be normal, but you would still live. This organ is the one that helps us through times of famine. Its job is energy regulation. What happens when our energy levels go down? And we're in famine, the hypothalamus says, slow metabolism down, turn up the hunger. Why do we turn up the hunger? So we go out and hunt. We look for food. But where do we look for food? Our pantries, our grocery stores. Not a lot of work to look for food nowadays. There are sensors from the body that tell the brain what it's doing. So hormones, what are hormones? Hormones are chemical signals secreted by one part of the body. They go through the bloodstream, past the blood-brain barrier, taken up by the hypothalamus. They're either, for our intensive purpose, they're either saying I'm full or I'm hungry. I'm full, I'm hungry, all day long. You can think of it as the control center. I looked for a picture, I didn't find it. There was a movie about 2 years ago it was about a little girl, and she had these emotions in her, and there's this little control center in her head. Inside out, yeah. And so, this is what makes me think of it. So your body wants energy, and so these sensors throughout your GI tract send these signals to the brain. Send me more energy, or I'm doing well. Don't send me more energy. Where do those signals come from? So they're going to the hypothalamus. Where do they come from? What parts of the body? Stomach, absolutely. Intestines. Fat itself. 40 years ago, we thought the fat itself was just a storage organ. You put calories in there, it sits around till we need it. It comes out of there like our gas tank. Our fat is an organ, like skin and all our other organs, and it's constantly talking to the body. Sometimes it's saying nice things, and sometimes, obviously, as we know, it's not. There's this disease that maybe we've all heard. If you have a heart problem, sometimes they call it cardiomyopathy. So apathy being the sick heart. There's something called nephropathy, so kidneys sick. So there's a term called adiposopathy, sick fat. The analogy for that is if you see a balloon and you keep blowing that balloon up, so each fat cell being that balloon, and you keep blowing it up, right? I feel that point when you're blowing the balloon, you think it's gonna pop if I blow any more in it.
1 thin mint.
Yeah. It's about to burst. It's sending out inflammatory signals to the rest of the body. Some of those same inflammatory signals that we see in rheumatoid arthritis and a lot of other rheumatologic diseases, TNF alpha, interleukins, and things like that. And that is when all that's going out, that causes our blood pressure, our cholesterol problems, our knee problems even, and a lot of the other things that we see with weight, which is also why just losing a small amount of weight starts to change those things. So that just bringing down that fat cell from overstretched to down, maybe 5% is where it starts. We're going to see health benefits at 5%. We'll see more health benefits at 10%, and all of what we'll call metabolic benefits are about 15%. Even if you have a lot more weight to lose, most people don't have any more metabolic benefit after that. So all these things send signals. If we start to think about the main signals, they're called leptin and ghrelin. Leptin being from the fat. The fat, when we have enough of it, says, I'm full, don't send me more. As you lose fat for famine, that signal goes down. I'm not full anymore, send more food. The other one is from the stomach, called ghrelin. When people do stomach surgery for bariatric surgery, they're cutting some of that ghrelin signal out. Unfortunately, it tends to grow back in a lot of places, which is why that isn't recommended for everybody. But that the ghrelin hormone comes up right before a meal. We eat food, and we're not sure if it's actually the volume of the food, but it's probably the volume versus the nutrients of the food. Right after a meal, it comes down. So what happens? We get hungry before a meal, and then after a meal, it comes down. Well, when we lose weight, the opposite thing happens. Wait, let's see what I got here. 2011, a study came out in the New England Journal of Medicine. For us, kind of the Bible. The author, if you ever wanted to look it up for some reason, was Sumithran. But it really said why I think this is a disease. And so this is what happens. When I tell all of you, this is why your body is rebelling against it, this is what happens. As you lose weight, the one that tells you you're full comes down. That's not good. The one that tells you you're hungry goes up. And it stays there. Every time you eat a meal, we're a little more hungry than we were at our higher weight. We're a little less full than we were at that weight. Keep your weight off for 3 months, 6 months, a year. Pick a number. It could be 30 pounds, 50 pounds, 150 pounds. It doesn't go back to normal. What does that mean? It's a picture of me. I'm trying to be funny here. So, if you're standing there at your highest weight, the analogy is, as you lose weight, there's this little guy yelling in your ear. I've told you guys a lot of this. So this little guy yelling in your ear and he's saying, eat. You lose a little more and he gets louder. He's really not just a little guy, he's the devil. He's yelling at us. By the time you get to your low weight and you stay there, he's yelling really loud. How do we counteract him? Eat. Sometimes it's eat, absolutely. But here we try to use a lot of other tools. Do I have it on here? Yep. So the easiest way to talk about that is the things we do here. Diet with high protein, less carbohydrate is one form, I say, of earmuffs. Exercise to make you feel good is another form. Sleep, which I harp about day after day after day, is another form. And the last thing, which we do here different than a lot of other do-it-yourself diets, is medications. So what happens is these earmuffs from those 4 things go on. And those signals are still coming, but we can't hear them. So what happens? Stop our medication. Signals are back. For different people, that's different. So I don't want to say every single person always has to stay on medication. When we look at our different DNA, though, some people need more of the exercise. So you stop the exercise, the earmuffs come off. Maybe for some people, the exercise, the diet, and the sleep is enough. They don't need medicines. So every person is going to be different. We have to find each of us, what is the mix to keep those earmuffs on? Because the signals are continually there. Make sense? Everything we try to do here really gets back to this. When I thought of putting this talk together, I wanted to talk about this. And why, unfortunately, we have to keep doing and doing and doing the things that we do here. It's not fun always. We know that. But when we don't, the earmuffs come off and those signals say, eat. So what's going on in our world to fix this? So in 2013, the American Medical Association said obesity is a disease. What does that mean? blood pressure is a disease, right? There isn't a primary care doctor who you go see and they say your blood pressure is high. What do they first tell you? Eat a low salt diet. And how often does that work? Not very often. And then you go and you take a blood pressure medicine, and that does work. And you go back 6 months later and they say, you're doing great, stay on it. 6 months later, you're doing great, stay on it. It's a disease and we have to keep treating it. It doesn't go away. Blood pressure can go away though, probably with weight loss for most of us, but not everybody. There's people walking around at 98 pounds who have blood pressure problems genetically. So now it's considered not only a chronic but serious disease. What we're trying to do is get primary care people and the medical community to stop just saying this is diet and exercise. This is something we need to treat. I'm actually preparing a talk in November at Obesity Week, which is a week where the surgical groups come together as well as the research groups. And I'm giving a talk. It's about if your doctor does not treat you or refer you to someone who treats weight, it's malpractice. Do I think it's truly malpractice? I don't. But I think we should start making that argument because everything we've been doing so far is not getting primary care doctors or even most specialists to do anything significantly about this. And so I think the only way to do that to our medical friends is to scare them a little bit. So maybe I'll give that talk here next time. ABOM, the American Board of Obesity Medicine. So that is a certifying body. We now have roughly 2,400 physicians in the country that are certified in obesity medicine. So a specialty now all among itself. But 2,400 people, and really when you look at numbers, over 100 million people in our country needing weight loss services of some type. You know, a lot of people come in to me and they say, I just want to be normal. Well, when 66 to 70% of our society is overweight, that's normal, isn't it? We don't want to be normal. We want to be, I don't like the word abnormal because the opposite of normal is not abnormal, super normal. We want to be different. Oh, last but not least, another thing that it's happening, but so slow, TROA, Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. So this is a bill that's been brought into Congress. Congress lasts 2 years. And so they brought it in the first Congress 6 years ago. And they have like 100 roughly Congress people sign on to the bill, but it doesn't go to vote. The next one, so then it dies after 2 years if nothing happens to it. It gets reintroduced roughly 3 or 4 years ago, if I don't have the years exactly right. It gets signed on by about 125-ish people, and it doesn't go to vote. And now we have, I think there's over 150 Congress people have signed on to this bill in support of it. But what has to happen? So this bill is actually to get it covered as a disease. So that you go in there with this diagnosis of obesity, weight problem, and that your insurance will pay for it. So that's really what it's for. And what has to happen is the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, has to score a bill before it can actually go to vote. Scoring a bill says how much is it going to cost the government for 10 years. And it has never gone to vote at this point. Will it ever? I don't think it's going to happen soon, unfortunately. When the government says we're going to cover it and Medicare covers it, all the insurance companies start to fall in line after that. With Obamacare a couple years ago, they did anything that was, they grade recommendations. A is the top level of recommendation, B is still a good recommendation, C and D are weaker recommendations to do something medically. Weight treatment gets a B recommendation, means it should have been covered under that law, and it still has this carve out and exclusion, which is why the medicines we use for most people aren't covered for the same reasons. Not fair. Not fair at all. You know, someone who has diabetes on insulin nowadays, they're spending $500 a month to treat diabetes with insulin, which means with insulin treatment, unless you're a type 1 diabetic, you will not be losing significant weight if that is your treatment. If we start using some of the therapies that we use here, and I do use some of those medicines for some of us that are expensive, but they're not being covered for most of us. So why did we put together the program that we have here? Most people will call these 4 things the cold.
Yeah, it gets colder and hotter.
These rooms are so crazy
It's okay.
because it's either too cold or too hot. By code, there has to be 2 air conditioners in here. Put up the wall. average is 5. Let's see. I put it up by 1. Let's see what happens. So a lot of people call this the 4 legs of the chair. Have I told anyone that analogy before? So if you have a chair, and or you don't have a chair yet, it's January, and you haven't come to a comprehensive program, what do? You go to the gym. 1 leg of the chair. Stress comes into our lives. Stress is shaking the chair. What happens when you're only balancing on 1 leg? Falls over. So you start a diet and you start exercise. There's 2 legs of your chair. What happens? Stress comes into our lives, shakes our chair. A little better. You add the 3rd one, behavior modification, which is really our classes. I like to call it trigger and learning from our mistakes type things. All of us do things that you're like, oh my gosh, I should have done it differently that time. That's where classes come in for me. And then the last is the meds and accountability. You know, with our AMP program coming in once a month for time after time after time, knowing that we're going to get on the scale, knowing that we can walk and talk about what's coming up, going on a cruise, going away for the summer, things like that, that we know is coming up, we can kind of strategize for. When you put all those 4 together, the 4 legs of the chair, we have a stable base. And they found this is the 4 pillars. So the society I'm part of, we have that as, these are our pillars, they call it. I like the analogy of the 4 legs of the chair pretty well. Make sense? One of the things I often talk about is, oh sorry, go ahead, Sue.
In the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
when you were first, I however many years ago, meds were not a part of the program, correct?
Correct. So meds have always been a very small part. So let's go through the history of meds. 2012, we have a lot of new medications. The older medications, phentermine, came out in 1959, but went through the fen-phen era. Most people were saying, don't, scared of it. So there were 2 medicines that were on the market when I first started weight therapy in about 2004 or 5 that were used regularly. Meridia. Meridia was actually, I think, a blood pressure. It was an antidepressant that had a side effect of that, but it also increased blood pressure a little bit. And if you didn't lose weight but stayed on that medicine, that blood pressure increase was bad for you. And so it went off the market. There was also Xenical, which is now Ally, over the counter. Any of us can buy it. What happens when you take Ally or Xenical? So its job is blocking fat absorption. So if we eat fat and we block fat absorption, what happens? You get diarrhea. I remember, and it was, by the way, at that time, both those medicines were $140 a month, and people were paying for them. And this medicine at $140 a month gave you diarrhea. And the type of diarrhea was what's called steatorrhea, which is a oily diarrhea. I will tell you that type of diarrhea, you could not tell the difference between passing gas and passing this.
Oh, no.
Oh no is right. I remember very vividly one of my patients in an office sitting there. I have to go home, I'm sorry. And you think that woman ever took that medicine again? No. So that medicine is essentially, it was prescription. They cut the dose in half and put it over the counter because people weren't using it. Did that answer? Oh, I didn't finish it. So fast forward 2012, we've now had 4 medicines come out on the market for weight, which we can now pick and choose between. Also, I became part of this society that teaches people how to do weight loss. That was 2005. And phentermine is a backbone of our treatment. Because it's been out since 1959, we know exactly what it does. It was cleared of all the problems that what happened in fen-phen days. Fenfluramine was the other medicine. It went away. It is never coming back. It did work well on the brain. It didn't work well with the heart. And so they took it off the market. It won't come back. Some of you have heard of a medicine called Belviq. Belviq is very much like the fenfluramine, but it only works on the brain and it actually does not work on the heart. So it works very well sometimes even with phentermine together. And it's been studied in small studies together.
Where is Tenuate in that?
Tenuate came out in 1959 also.
1950.
Yeah. So phentermine, tenuate, something called diethylpropion, which a few of you may know about. Sorry, diethylpropion is tenuate.
Yes.
Phendimetrazine also came out in 1959. Then there was really those 2 medicines in the 2000s that came out, and then there was nothing till 2012. The FDA got very, very leery of releasing weight loss drugs. And so now every weight loss drug has to go through more scrutiny than the average drug. These 3 things, I always call it my key 3. There's diet, there's exercise, there's sleep. The story I tell a lot is I had a gentleman who was doing all 3 of these and is losing weight. Then he had weird conference calls, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning. So his sleep went away. So he had 2 of them, and he lastly maintained well. I've seen other times the same thing, and then so other times he was sleeping well, but he didn't have to diet as well. He did these 2 things and he maintained. Then I start seeing people, oh my gosh, I'm now missing 2 of them. Diet is off, sleep is off. Maybe I still exercise, but exercise is probably the thing that falls away with diet. Maybe I'm sleeping. So you do 1 of them and we're gaining. But if you do 0 of them, that's when I see gain fast. I think we should all set, even though exercise is probably the only 10% of weight loss, there should be this little alarm that goes off. If we're regularly exercising and we stop exercising, we need to start watching food. When we're doing all of them, we tend to do much better. Questions? Yes.
I know you and I have had many discussions about staying on attenuate forever.
Yes.
What kind of side effects, if any, have you heard about long term? I mean, it's been probably about less than a year, or maybe a year that I've been on it. I'm happy to be on it forever. I'm happy to know you and come here forever. But I mean, let's just be real about the side effects. Can you?
So there are no very long-term studies on the drug besides clinical evidence, meaning people have been using it for years and years and years. Phentermine, which is a more potent as far as stimulant drug, there are studies that are 10 to 12 years long, clinical studies of the same person taking it for that long. We do not see any problems whatsoever. One of the big groups that treat weight called the Endocrine Society came out with a position statement in 2015. It says, yes, we don't have, for phentermine and drugs like it, we do not have true long-term blinded studies, same person forever. But we can kind of say these drugs have been out since 1959. There have been people taking them for years and years and years. We have not seen any signal of any problems. Then you start to say, what's the opposite? So what's the alternative? Well, if I stop this drug and I start gaining weight, we know that there's problems with weight gain. So there's not even theoretical problems with those drugs long term. You can make it up that there is, but there is no evidence of it. Versus what we know, which is weight long term has problems. Will there ever be a study done? I sure hope, and the only person who's ever going to do it with people is the government themselves. It's been generic, since early on. So drugs get studied when they're new and patentable. But the government does study things that's off patent and such because they have a lot, if you can use an inexpensive drug like attenuate in a lot more people than some of the expensive ones, it would benefit them. In the shorter studies, it works just a hair less than phentermine with less stimulation.
What is attenuate? What is that?
Diethylpropion, it's a stimulant much like phentermine. For a lot of times we use it in 2 ways. It's a short-acting one. So some people take phentermine in the day and use a little attenuate in the evening to get that last little piece so it wears off before bed. Other people use it up to 3 times a day, or an extended release one that does the same thing as 3 times a day but in 1 pill. Phentermine for some people too stimulating, too much, and sometimes we just choose attenuate for whatever reason it works, and then we stick with it. It's an art as much as it is a science. There's an interesting thing. When I talk about drugs, I'm going to show that slide, but if you look at any drug, if they do something called a waterfall plot, which they don't do very often, waterfall plot, if there's 100 people in there, and then weight loss is here, they'll show how much weight loss each person, so there's a line. And you'll find people that have that much weight loss, and then puts it all in order. And then the weight loss goes down and down and down, and you actually get to some people that don't have any weight loss, and on the same drug, you'll get a few people that have weight gain. Before you put anyone on a drug, we don't know where you're gonna fit. And so what do we have to do? We have to take our best guess based on who you are, based on what other medicines you are, based on your other medical problems, and experience of the last 12 years of doing this full time, and say, I think you're gonna do best on this one, and we try it. If it works well, that's the one for you. And if it doesn't work well, we need to try something else.
Does phentermine have a bad rap? That why, as I mentioned, some people are like, well, he can't be on it forever.
Phentermine gets that bad rep because of fen-phen. A lot of people got in trouble for being fen-phen. They were clinics of fen-phen. You just went in, you got your fen-phen, and you left. And then there was these heart valve abnormalities that went along with the fenfluramine. So it went through a problem. People who say that don't know phentermine.
Okay.
And my answer to those people are, thank you, but I'm being treated by a specialist.
Right.
Who,
No, I definitely.
yeah. Or nothing, or you say nothing. Sometimes those people aren't going to listen no matter what you say. The first thing that happens when someone goes into the emergency room for whatever reason, they go, oh my gosh, you're on phentermine.
Right.
It's not phentermine. Russ,
Wait, me?
go ahead. Yeah,
Oh, I thought you were looking at someone.
go ahead.
So what about metformin?
Metformin is an interesting drug also. So metformin started out as a diabetes drug. Then it was shown to be a very good pre-diabetes drug. And then interestingly enough, it was actually shown to be a good drug for weight loss initially in teenagers. Only about a year and a half ago, did they figure out what it was really doing. So we know in diabetes, it's taking your high blood sugars and bringing them down. The liver makes sugar itself. So when we're sleeping, the liver is constantly making sugar. It slows that down a little bit, so your peaks of sugar are not as high. But we found out one of those hormones that come from the stomach that I talked about before, this one's called GLP-1. GLP-1 tells the brain I'm full. If any of you guys, if we've talked about either Victoza or Saxenda, that is what that drug is. But metformin is stimulating this hormone and telling the brain that I'm full.
Why does sleep play such a big part?
So going back to those two hormones that I talked about, leptin and ghrelin, the easiest thing to say is when you don't sleep, the leptin that tells us we're full also goes down, and the ghrelin that tells us we're hungry goes up. On top of the fact that cortisol, our stress hormone, also goes up. Cortisol takes tissues, we'll call it protein and such, breaks it down, brings up our blood sugar. When blood sugar is high, the pancreas has to then make insulin, and then the insulin takes and puts the sugar inside of our muscles and our fat and makes more fat. Make sense? Go ahead.
The thing that sends it, you say sends it to our brain, are you speaking of the hypothalamus?
So the hypothalamus is the receptor. That's where all the signals go to.
Right.
The different places that send the signals, the stomach, the small intestine mostly, the fat, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. Those are the big five.
So if you were able to control the hypothalamus, then it would really take care of a lot of things.
Yes. So the medicines we use actually, that's where most of them work. They're working on the hypothalamus directly.
Okay.
So phentermine, tenuates, Belviq, half of Contrave, GLP-1, so both Victoza and Saxenda, all working on the hypothalamus.
Okay.
So they're like tricking the hypothalamus to think.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
Like, so they're telling you, what exactly is it doing?
They're stimulating the fullness center is really what they're doing. And so you're fooling your body into thinking that I've had something to eat longer.
I'd like to go back to your comment about eggs.
Yes,
I love eggs.
yes,
I was thrilled when the thinking on eggs changed.
yes.
But some of the old ideas are still in my head, so I usually eat 2 egg whites in the morning with my usual oatmeal and a complete egg in the afternoon. Any issues with this eating eggs with yolks?
So yolks add a few calories, but they also add some good vitamins. So
Right.
choline is a very good vitamin that comes in the yolk. I always eat my eggs whole.
You don't worry about the cholesterol in the yolks.
No. We get it more through other sources.
God bless you.
But you have in a day, if you like.
So best protein that you can take in is whey protein, animal protein. Second best is egg protein. After that, plant proteins come down the list significantly, which is why I'm not a believer in pea protein. Actually, soy would be the next one if I had to go down the list. Pea protein is another of high quality proteins. They grade them on a scale of 1 down to 0. And whey and animal proteins come right at the top.
And so why do you put pea at the bottom? Because sometimes I give my little one like a shake with pea protein because she's not a huge eater, but I know she needs the calories and she likes them. I'll put, PB2 and banana, we've talked about this. So I do pea protein because my big one has like a lactose issue, so I don't give her the whey. So are you saying that I shouldn't even give that to her? Because it's not a good source
It's
of
all at
protein?
different people at different times. If you're looking for weight loss,
Oh, okay.
so when we say what makes a high quality protein versus a lower quality protein, it's the amount of essential amino acids versus non-essential amino acids. And so animal proteins have the most essential amino acids. When you look, and I think there's 4 branched chain amino acids. One of them is called leucine. Leucine is the one that triggers muscle building. And so if you go all the way down and you just ate that particular one, you could put on more muscle without extra calories. Where we say if you're having less quality proteins with less essential amino acids, essential means our body doesn't make them. And so we have less amino acids. You're just getting calories that you're eating in without getting that muscle stimulus triggering that will keep our metabolisms going.
Continuing on with eggs, so which would you say would be the better choice just in general? An actual egg or the carton of egg whites? The liquid?
Eggs.
The
Eggs. Chicken, eggs.
So the actual egg itself.
Egg.
The liquid.
Eggs, veggies, not toast.
Are you thinking of it in terms of, because I'm thinking I might be able to interpret what you're saying. So I think that my mentality in the past, not right this second, but in the past had been, I'm gonna make a big giant omelet of egg whites because it's gonna be more food and I'm gonna feel more satisfied because the calorie density of that meal versus having like a 3-egg omelet with full yolks. So is that what you're saying? You would maybe, I'm assuming this is mom, would do the carton because you're a growing boy, young man, and maybe it would be better to have like the carton because then you can kind of go carte blanche and have almost whatever you want. If you want like a big plate of food, like now I just do a big giant salad and I'll put hard-boiled eggs in them if I do that.
I will say egg whites do have less calories than when you have in the same amount because the yolk has the cholesterol and more calories in it. But so if you're looking for volume, egg whites. If you're looking for what may fill you up, I think it's probably eggs.
Okay, yeah, that's
You're eating a lot of
that's what I was
fluff.
trying to ask.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree now. I agree with that.
You mentioned you were taking a look at the historical things, how people have changed over the years. I was thinking that people who are back in, say, the early settlers with the Indians, what was their lifespan then, just compared to now? How has medication had that influence in general on our weight gains?
So they live much, much shorter than we live now.
So would medications that a lot of us are on have an influence over our gaining weight and how much they have studied?
There are a lot of medicines that we take for other reasons that do cause weight gain. Antidepressants, antipsychotics, diabetes medicines, even Benadryl has a small weight gaining property. There's a whole list of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but those are the kind of main ones we start to think about. Steroids for sure, all those kind of things. But they're also doing good things, or we wouldn't be taking them. When I look at a medicine, I think of, yes, its benefit is this, but what is its side effect? And I'm constantly calling primary care people or such, can we switch them into something else that's less gaining? Yes?
So,
Either one.
so if the dopamine is low and the serotonin, then, okay, where was I going with this question? Then you're lacking, what was I trying to say? She was talking about that last night too. Then you're
So
certain
dopamine-
personality or something like that. What did you say?
So dopamine and serotonin are different neurotransmitters than hunger neurotransmitters. They tell us it's either reward and calm,
Right.
or if you think of the dopamine is more of the go out and hunt, and The other is more, I'm satisfied. If you think of it
So
in
it's
appetite
hormonal,
terms.
but is there certain foods that you should be on more than others, or?
I don't look
Not
at it quite
really,
that
not-
way. There may
Okay.
be some to that. I don't look at it quite that way. Yes.
So we hear, like on the radio, you hear B12 shots are
Yes.
like a thing to help you lose weight. So can you explain a little bit about the science behind the B12 shots?
Absolutely.
Why you choose not
There
to?
is no science behind B12 shots. Every time they have studied B12 in a blinded fashion, you get a shot. One of them has B12, one of them does not have B12. Saline is what they normally use. You cannot tell the difference. Both people feel better. That's not the issue. But if I'm going to charge you $20 for, or whatever they cost, I don't even know, for a B12 shot, you want it to be doing something. Now, if you have B12 problems, absolutely. There are some reasons that people should be doing B12. So B12 abnormalities for sure. Some people on Metformin should be looking at B12 if you're on it for long periods of time. There are some other states with stomach issues and such where you're not absorbing B12. But as a general rule, if you're just normal, B12 is not recommended.
If you have high cortisol from stress,
Yes.
is there vitamins like B12 would be good for you?
Not directly. We need to figure out what your stress is and how much you're sleeping, and that would do much better than any vitamin per se.
Holistic medicines, the
Garcinia cambogia
Yeah.
is a fad. It was happy for a while because Dr. Oz put it on. It's gone. No one should be using it. It actually never
messed up your liver and was
it didn't do anything.
Are there any others out there that might be worth checking?
There's a few, but nothing that's as strong enough as a good diet, exercise, sleep, and potentially the medicines we do use. So, on a scale of 1 to 100, are there a 3? Maybe. But is the 3 worth $25? No, or more. I don't think so.
So I have a question. So are kids at the hospital at PCH, those that are put on TPN and cannot eat anything, they do not suffer from the same lack of hunger cues that our other kids do because they're getting the nutrients. So then my thought process and my question is it possible that the brain doesn't have the same cues from the stomach as from the lack of nutrients? And as we grow older and we're exposed to all of this, like you said, the high fat, high fructose, all of this, our brain chemicals change like it does with drugs and alcohol and all the things that actually change the synapses and the chemicals of our brain, that it changes it to make us crave more high fat, high sugar, high all of that.
So
Is that a possibility?
yes, but there was a lot there. I'm gonna take 2 parts. People in the hospital, we have to think that we're not those people. Most of the time, if you're getting TPN, so it's liquid nutrition through a vein, there is something else going on in your body at that time that is probably knocking your appetite down. Or they're giving you enough calories that you're not needing it at this point. There's something else. If you
So
say,
is it the calorie thing, or is it the stomach that's making
the answer I think is yes. It's both.
Okay.
If you go towards us as adults and why we're different than those kids, which we are, it is learned behavior. It is our metabolism that changes somewhere between the age of 25 and 30. It is the reasons we eat, which is that whole category called emotional eating, and the reasons of stress, fatigue, boredom, you name it. There's about 5 of them. And we all use them at some level or another. If you use it too much, so food is a drug. Food is a drug that works for a while, and then we have to redose it. So then we eat it, and then we have to redose it, and that's the problem.
So your gallbladder, what exactly does that change when you have it removed? In terms of when you lose weight, what changes?
The gallbladder's purpose is as fat comes by, it squeezes and it mixes the juices that come from the liver that get stored in the gallbladder with your food to help digest the fatty foods. When your gallbladder comes out, the vessels or the tubes where it already was kind of going through adapt to not having that. Some people it causes a problem, so they don't absorb fatty foods as well. Other people, you'll never know the difference. There's a hormone that makes the gallbladder squeeze called CCK. CCK is one of those that go to the brain and tells you you're full. So if you're having food going through the intestine, your brain says, I'm full. It makes perfect sense. They've tried a lot of these other things. Can we give some of these hormones as appetite suppressants? So one of them, the GLP-1 going to the brain, it does work. Leptin, which is the one that comes from our fat, actually we have a leptin resistance. So people with a lot of weight have a lot of leptin because we have a lot of fat. But the brain doesn't hear those signals as well. It's almost like diabetes where we get resistant to insulin. Same type of thing.
And then, did someone else have a question for me? Oh, okay, I was. And then, so, as a follow-up, does fiber supplements such as Benefiber, do things like that help, not smooth the process, but
So
just make it
fiber
easier
helps a lot.
without it?
Fiber does two main things. Number one is a bolus of food going through your colon and intestines. So it takes up space. That space tells the brain I'm full. And the other thing we think it's doing is being good fertilizer for the bacteria of our colon. Think of it as that. So there's probiotics and prebiotics. Prebiotics is fiber. Probiotics is that good bacteria.